It was a hot one out here at Giants OTA number 6. This is your Blue Rush post-practice report. We got the gang all here for this one. We've got our NFL reporter for the Post, Ryan Dunleavy, Paul Schwartz, one of our beat writers, and also we have our longtime sports columnist, Steve Serby. I don't know who I give the mic to first. I guess I can let you guys fight for it. He's going in motion. Paul, we'll start with you here. Lot to take away, but obviously things are going to get overshadowed by the fight, the brawl, the skirmish, whatever people want to call it. Your takeaways from practice.
Usually there's not a lot of fights in OTAs. Usually it's not 90 degrees, okay? They're not in pads. You can kind of mark, you've been doing it long enough and you can kind of mark. Second day in pads, there'll be a fight for the short yardage, and you can usually name 3 or 4 guys who'll be involved, and usually you're right. Sometimes there's an outlier. So this is unusual. It's almost 90 here. They're not in pads, and it was pretty as training camp or OTA fights goes. You have Kayvon Thibodeau ripping his helmet off. You have Thibodeau, Jermaine Illuminor, the right tackle, shoving him. You have Kayvon Thibodeau going back at him. You have James Hudson, the new tackle, going after Thibodeau. You have Brian Burns coming off the bench, so to speak, to aid and abet Kayvon Thibodeau. Brian Burns said afterwards, he said, it's not great. It's not great to happen, but not a big deal. As long as we all, cooler heads prevailed, which he did. He had a funny line. He said something about what did he say? Ain't no big deal. He said something.
Ain't too deep.
Ain't too deep. Ain't too deep.
It ain't too deep. He said we squashed it. So it's not a big deal. But it's you know what? Last year, I will say this. Last year they were milquetoast. Their defense was milquetoast. They need not more fighting, but they need more fight. Abdul Carter, they mentioned today. Shane Bowen mentioned he has an edge to him. Things like that. They need more edge. Not that this fighting is edge, but let's go. This defense has to be feared and intimidate, not be a bunch of wimps who go out there and, give up points and yards.
And Shane Bowen also talked about the need for the defense to create more turnovers. We saw the secondary get 3 picks. Dane Belton, Trey Hawkins, and I believe the last name Page. Makari Page. Got to get that right. Defense was flying around today. I guess what were your thoughts on, the competition level that we saw at OTA practice number 6?
Yeah, definitely. I thought that the Giants invested like $140 million in this defense. And part of the reason is they didn't get enough turnovers. They didn't stop the run. Well, you saw them address all 3 levels in the offseason. They've created this thing called the turnover chest, which is actually Shane Bowen ripped off from his son's T-ball team, the Pirates, to take away the goods. It's a cool idea. You see teams do stuff like this. It's just a camaraderie thing, a little extra motivation for guys, a reason to celebrate after they get a pick. Obviously, 3 picks today seems to be contagious. They didn't have 3 picks till like week 16 last year, right? So they have better players on the field, Brandon. That's really the key, right? You have Javon Holland on the field, Paulson Adebo on the field. They have better players this year. Interesting today, Deonte Banks took no team reps, so you saw Cordell Flott at the second cornerback spot. That was an interesting wrinkle, but you could just tell the defense has a higher level of player this year. That should lead to better production and more turnovers.
Cordell Flott responded by having himself a pass breakup in OTAs. Again, secondary looking a lot better at this point than what they did last year. Serby, let's flip to the other side of the football. That's another unit, the offense, that's looking a lot better, a lot more polished than it was. I'm going to get to you in 1 second, but Russell Wilson has looked like he has come in. He's got that aura that guys are talking about, but he has a command on this offense. What are you seeing from the Giants offense? I guess these 2 OTAs we've been able to have access to.
Well, look, Russell Wilson's 36 years old. He's been there. He's done that. He's a former Super Bowl champion. But if he still was an elite quarterback, he would still be the quarterback of the Steelers, and we wouldn't be talking about Aaron Rodgers showing up whenever he decides to show up. But he'll stabilize the offense. The quarterback room has been upgraded. Jameis back up. Jackson Dart, that's the big question. When is he going to be ready to be the quarterback of the present rather than the quarterback of the future? But, I noticed a couple of things other than Darius Slayton wearing number 18 now. I think Jalen Hyatt has been impressive And I think he's going to have a role in this offense. And hey, he's a third-round pick. They traded up for him a couple of years ago. He's been a non-factor. He's been in the doghouse. He looks committed and dedicated to me right now. And the other guy is Evan Neal. Evan Neal, I think, is going, that's my prediction. You can burn this if it doesn't come true. He will start at guard this season over Greg Van Roten. That's my prediction. He looks spry. He looks committed. Brandon Brown, the assistant GM, has been impressed with the work that he's put in. And if he gets his technique and his balance right, I think Evan Neal's going to be a factor and resurrect his career.
That's a bold prediction right there. We were talking about how, like, you mentioned it to me, Paul. Like, hey, look, Evan Neal is taking reps with the ones, and I say, hey, if you're a first-round pick, they're gonna try different things to allow you to put your skill set on tape, make them right because we drafted you. But Evan Neal, have you seen the skill set kind of translate over? I know it's still only 2 practices, but what have you seen from him in his new position?
Well, first of all, we have to be careful about counting reps in June. You know what I mean? I mean, John Runyon and Greg Van Roten didn't take reps today, so someone has to start. You know what I mean? So they, Evan Neal was taking reps with the 2s last week. Now he's with the 1s because they're giving these veterans a day off, from teamwork, which makes total sense. He looks like a tackle. There aren't many 6'7" guards, okay? They drafted him to be a tackle, with a tall guy with long arms. Brandon Brown said, interesting, the assistant GM, he said, look, you have to know what role the guard plays in this offense. If you want, Chris Snee, if you want a guy to pull and move, Evan Neal is not your guy. If you want a guy to sit there, like Mekhi Becton did often last year for the Eagles, to block ahead in a power running game, Evan Neal might be your guy, might be. He's tall and his pad level is awful. So he needs to get his pad level down to be a guard. Everything happens much faster. They say in a phone booth, right? Everything happens faster. So if you could tell me the Giants are going to run the ball 45 times in a game, Evan Neal could be your starting guard. If you're going to get down 14-0 and you're going to have to throw the ball 45 times, Evan Neal might be a disaster, and Greg Van Roten would be better. So they have to see what's going on here. You know what I mean? He's not a natural guard, and we'll see. We'll see. But, I wouldn't, he could be the starting guard, but Greg Van Roten started every game and played every snap last year, so he has to be beaten out of the job.
Serby wants to jump in here.
There is hope for Evan Neal. The Giants, many, you remember years ago, had a top 10 offensive tackle who Tom Coughlin called an aircraft carrier. You remember who that was, right?
Eric Flowers.
Moved inside and played much better at guard. And, of course, Mekhi Becton with the Eagles, as you mentioned. So, yes, there is hope for Evan Neal. He is tall, but he is a power broker. That's the way Brandon Brown described him.
Let's go to the outside now. There's a lot of offensive line and Evan Neal talk. Let's talk about some of the receivers here. Serby kind of mentioned about how he thinks that Russell Wilson will be able to unlock Jalen Hyatt's potential. Darius Slayton is a guy that when they re-signed him, a lot of people were like, why? Why not go after the T. Higgins or some of those guys that are out there? Darius Slayton has been on point, Ryan. Like, he has had deep ball after deep ball. He's kind of putting his skill set on tape. Malik Neighbors hasn't been practicing as he's, rehabbing that toe injury. Could this is kind of weird saying this, him going into his 6th year, but could this 7th year, could this be Darius Slayton's best year in the NFL?
Yes, because they have the better quarterback play this year. Darius Slayton's best skill is a deep ball, as is Jalen Hyatt's. Russell Wilson's best skill is throwing a deep ball in a bucket. So they could be a match made in heaven. Look, we're going to remember Darius Slayton as the ultimate survivor here because he's going to end up probably in the top 5, maybe 2 when his contract's up for the Giants in catches. He is a guy that they basically they gave a pay cut to in his 4th year, almost got rid of, then almost didn't resign, then re-signed him. Then he held out last year to get a better contract. They didn't give it to him. That sounded like he was going to leave. And now he's back on a 3-year, $36 million contract which is like real money for an NFL receiver. So he's the ultimate survivor here. What I think is interesting, Brandon, is this roster's tweaked at almost every position except receiver. They brought the top 4 receivers back. It's Neighbors, who jumps in for the huddle on first team but doesn't practice in OTAs, but he's in the play here in the language. It's Wandale, it's Slayton, and it's Hyatt. They brought back the same 4 guys, which I think tells you that despite the pathetic passing offense numbers last year, they don't blame those 4 guys. They think those 4 guys have a ceiling they haven't reached yet.
All right, 30 seconds, Serb, and I'm going to go around the entire group here. No predictions, just final thoughts as we get ready to come back next week for the next week's Access.
Well, I'll be writing in the New York Post tomorrow, and it'll be online today, about the play calling conundrum. Will it be Brian Dable? Will it be Mike Kafka? Will it be a combination of both? Read about it tomorrow.
Paul.
I would say that Russell Wilson is can be exhausting to listen to, but he's unlike any quarterback they've had maybe ever. You know, certainly in my 30 years covering the team, there's been good quarterbacks, but his personality is nothing like Eli Manning's. It's nothing like Daniel Jones's. He commands the room. He is a name dropper. He is relentlessly, almost sugary, saccharine, genuine in everything he does. He could seem phony, except I don't think he's the least bit phony. He believes what he says. And look, Wandale Robinson today, he liked Daniel Jones, liked him as a guy. Didn't like, averaging 6-7 yards a catch last year. And he said there's a big difference. He didn't mention Daniel Jones, but there's a big difference in a quarterback who knows what he wants, everything. He commands the room. So it'll be very interesting watching. As Steve said earlier, look, the guy's 36, and if he was a great quarterback, he wouldn't be on the Giants. He might still be on Seattle, or he might be in Denver, or he might be in Pittsburgh. He wouldn't be with the Giants.
He wouldn't be in Denver with Sean Payton.
So, so we'll see. We'll see. He's got to stay healthy. He's an older quarterback. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to prove he can play better than he did last year with the Steelers. But it's not going to be for a lack of effort and a lack of genuineness, because he's got those.
I think for me, it's the action and the energy that I'm seeing at practice right now. You're seeing guys fly around, both on the defensive and the offensive side. I understand they're in pajamas and helmets right now, but it kind of takes me back to when I was trying to make the team here, 2007, 2008. You got to take advantage of every single rep that you have, and now as a receiver, you're able to get evaluated because you have competent play from the QB1, QB2. Tommy DeVito knows what he's doing, and if you're a rookie going with Jackson Dart, it's just like keep running. That guy can throw that ball out there. So it's just one of those things where I understand we're not going to crown anyone Super Bowl champs just yet, but for the right now, being able to evaluate it as both a former player and I guess media now, it's fun watching these practices. Really quick.
Weren't you number 82?
I was 82.
I remember you.
Yep. Daniel Bellinger has to pay me for that number, but it is what it is at this point. Close this out, Ryan.
I would say the number one thing I was interested in today, and I think Paul will write about it, you'll read it, is there might not be a more interesting character in the organization right now, a more person with more pressure on them than Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, with all that was spent on the defense. He talked today about utilizing people, maybe getting away from some of what we saw from his playbook last year to capitalize on strengths. I think Bowen's a very interesting character. He talked, Paul write it, and number one thing Giants fans want to see is can he get Thibodeau, Carter, and Burns on the field together, and I think we're going to see a lot of that.
And this is a defense that should help Russell Wilson with better field position and more opportunities, because there has to be more turnovers this year than there were last year.
Well, you can bank that in the turnover chest. Yeah. The turnover chest. I'm sure we'll talk about that again at another time. We had a blast out there at practice today. Thanks for watching your Blue Rush post-practice report.